Good morning and welcome to the 2018 Communication Symposium. I am one of your hosts, Addison Van Patten.
And I am your other, more charming host, Cameron Freeman.
Can you please stick to the script, Cameron?
Wait, this is scripted?
Moving on. So we'd like to thank all of you for coming out this morning.
And you won't regret it. We have quite a show planned for you all.
We have invited 3 media professionals to come and speak to us about their jobs in the field, industry, and their just journeys overall.
I don't know about you, Addie, but I am so excited and I have so many questions to ask them.
Hey now, this isn't all about you, Cameron. This is about them too. You know, towards the end of the show, we're going to let the audience ask any questions that they possibly have to ask the media professionals about anything.
That's amazing. Well, let's get into it. I don't think I could wait any longer.
All right, let's begin. Cameron, will you do the honors?
Yes, thank you, Addie. For our first guest, we have the one and only Peter Rollins.
Hey, wait a second. I mean, I know who he is, but aren't you going to tell the audience a little bit about him?
You're right. Maybe I should have stuck to the script. Well, Peter Rollins is a multidisciplinary editor, teacher, and new media specialist. After finishing his undergraduate in the art department at UC San Diego, he went to the director music videos for bands like Abney Park to co-producing his own television show, No Escape TV.
Most recently, Peter co-founded his own production, Rollins Brand, creating videos and branded content for companies such as DENA, LucasArts, and Bondi Namco Entertainment. He also teaches editing and new media at the Academy of Arts and San Francisco State. Yeah, right here. Did you know he's also an alumnus here? He did get his master's in our very own Beckett department.
Wow. Yes, and now he is currently working for Google. When I grow up, I want to be just like Peter. Well, who do we have next?
Next up, we have the amazing and talented Cassandra Bankston.
Wow, I watch all of her skincare routine videos.
You watch all of her videos?
How do you think I got so fresh?
You're right. The YouTube sensation Cassandra Bankston obtains over 800,000 subscribers. She is a public figure, social media influencer, and entrepreneur. An internationally recognized beauty expert and media personality, she has helped over countless campaigns and advertisers specialize in development and brands for hundreds of aligned companies and charitable organizations. She focuses on creating content that is engaging, entertaining, and also educational.
Well, let's get her up here then. I can't wait for her to answer questions. Let's have a warm welcome for Cassandra Bankston.
And our final guest is Justin McDaniel. Justin has made his mark for working for Twitter for almost 5 years as a software engineer and a contributor for Twitter Media Studios related media and services. He also focuses his talents on Twitter's Snappy TV, which is a service that quickly clipping, editing, and sharing live video clips on Twitter and other social media platforms.
Before Twitter, he also served as a software engineer for many other corporations like Yahoo, JumpCut, Play-Doh Learning, and more.
Can we please get a round of applause for Justin McDaniel?
And now, we would like to take we were going to read the questions that we have for them.
All right, so I have a first question. It's going to be for all 3 of you guys. Feel free, whoever just feels more organic, to answer it. What steps did you take to get where you are today?
I can start. So in my early 20s, I built a website for the company I was running that was doing inline skate and skateboard accessories. And at the time, I was doing a lot of trade shows for the industry, and a lot of different companies in the industry saw what I built and wanted me to help them build theirs or build theirs. So I ended up building websites for Rollerblade, Rosie's, and a number of other skateboard, inline skate companies. And then I just decided I like doing that a whole lot better than what I was doing. So I taught myself how to code. I started a web consulting firm. And then I eventually started working at a startup called NetSchools, and I was lucky enough to get a really good mentor that taught me a lot of things about the industry and how to work in the industry. And I spent probably 2 years reading every book I could find to teach myself how to work in the industry. And then I was really lucky after that, and I've worked at 5 different startups, and I've been through 3 successful acquisitions.
That's really awesome.
Justin, what would you say prepared you the most for your career?
A lot of hard work, definitely. Like 20 hours a day of just consuming everything I could. And when I started, it was a big risk for me at the time. I was making really good money doing what I was doing before. And when I started the consulting firm, I took every job I could find, and most of them I had no idea how to do what they wanted me to do, and I had to go learn it on the fly. So I pretty much spent just an enormous amount of time figuring out what it is I had to learn to be able to be successful.
Could you touch a little bit on teaching yourself how to code?
It was extremely hard. I had a lot of false starts. Like I tried to teach myself Java, and I read 3 or 4 books. I didn't understand it really. I mean, the concepts made sense to me, but I couldn't make that actual leap of like being able to think in that language and be able to produce something. And what really helped me was just like making the leap and doing things that I didn't understand and making huge mistakes and learning from them. Like some of the worst mistakes I ever made, like I built an email service thing for Macy's for their secret shopper program that was supposed to collect all this data from their email service and then tabulate it, and they could then look at the results or whatever. And I accidentally sent out, I think, 100,000 emails that weren't supposed to be sent out because I had an infinite loop in my code because I still didn't know what I was doing. And it only ran for like 7 minutes, but it was literally enough to send out 100,000 erroneous emails to people that shouldn't have gotten them. So I'm pretty good at email service code now.
I'll go next.
Of course.
So I actually amusingly have sort of the opposite trajectory from Justin's. My father was a computer programmer. He started with computers back before they even had computer science programs. He got his PhD in mathematics because that's what it was. But so I grew up with computers. I was very much one of the computer nerds in high school. And so I went to UCSD to study computer science. And I did that for my first year while also doing like general ed courses. But then for fun, I took a couple of electronic music classes and decided that that was a whole lot more fun. And also, in a weird way, my father was a computer programmer, so it was sort of like rebellion against my parents by like, well, my dad was a computer programmer, so I'm not going to do that. And so I switched to a music major doing electronic music. But then what I found was that every music piece I did was the soundtrack to a movie in my head. So I started doing some video classes and very quickly got sucked into that. And did film and video at UCSD. This was back when it really was film, that celluloid stuff that you looked at in video. Graduated from UCSD, moved up to the Bay Area, and for a good 10, 15 years, did a combination of like freelance production jobs, everything from PA up to cinematographer, and also worked as a projectionist at the Castro Theater because that was a great way to see lots of good movies for free. But then eventually that got to be a bit of a grind, and I was offered the position at the Academy of Art as the technical supervisor for their video editing labs, which was a way to get a nice stable income, working sort of like your standard kind of 9-to-5 job. Took that, worked that for a couple of years, but then started to get bored with that because it isn't always the most fun stuff. But I started teaching some classes there too, and I really enjoyed teaching. And that's why I actually came to Becca for my master's degree, so that I could continue on in a teaching career with a graduate degree. As a grad student here, I started teaching classes, graduated, was teaching, and that was literally going to be my career path for the rest of my life. And then I got an email from one of my former classmates basically saying, hey, do you want a video editing job at Google? And I was like, oh. Well, I'd never considered that, and completely coincidental, my wife had started working at Google just a few months before that. So we were like, oh, well, that could be a whole lot, that could be convenient if we work in the same place, and I have to be honest, it was also for a whole lot more money, which, when you reach a certain age, starts to become more important, especially when you have a kid. And so I left teaching to go work at Google, and, very glad that I did it. It's a great place to work, and so that's where we are now.
Cassandra, how about you?
So for me, I got started completely on accident. Before I was a social media person, before I studied aesthetics and dermatology and skincare, I was a girl with skin issues. I grew up with severe cystic acne that had covered 80 to 95% of my face. And you probably can't tell from looking at me, and it's because I got to know makeup and skincare and scar reduction pretty well. But going through school, it was an issue for me. I had names called, people would call me Pizza Face, The Exorcist, the walking disease, the infection. And when you hear that, you know, walking down J Hall, and when you play it back in your head every single day, it really starts to weigh on you. So my insecurities got the best of me, and even after talking to school counselors, I made the decision to do private study. And this was both a blessing and a burden, because having private study taught me how to research things on my own, how to go after what I want, and to get the answers that nobody else could give me. But it also helped me create this shield around me that was really just a wall. It was a shield of makeup. It was a shield of my bedroom. But it wasn't just protecting me from the outside, it was keeping me in. And YouTube was this thing that back in 2009, nobody knew what that was. And I would watch these beautiful girls apply makeup to their already beautiful skin. And I sat there and I thought to myself, gosh, if they're using this foundation and this concealer item, how can I take that and how can I use that to cover my acne? So it took years, but I ended up being able to cover my skin to the point that I could book work as a model. And you might think, oh my God, like, there it is, bullies, you know, ugly duckling, now she's a pretty model. It wasn't a happy feeling for me though, because instead of being proud about being in a magazine or getting pitched for a billboard, I felt insecure because the ugly duckling who didn't want to live does not fit into the same the same body as the model who's paid to be pretty. So I thought to myself, well, the doctor says there's other people out there that have this. I don't see them, but I know how bad it hurts. So I decided to go online to YouTube and show other people how I got through every day. The makeup that I used to cover my skin, what I was learning in aesthetic school, how you shouldn't sleep in your makeup, guys, it's really not good for you, and those kind of things. And I started posting online to this community of people who also had acne. And for the first time, for these people who, like me, felt so alone, there was somebody else who could openly talk about their experience, their fears, their insecurities, but also show that there's hope. There's other people like you, you're not alone, and guess what? There's new products. We're trying things out. This is what didn't work for me. So from there, I started pursuing different degrees in skincare, different certifications, and I started reading a lot of books as well. I had to learn how to edit video. I had to learn what sound was, what lighting was. Wait, I cannot use my laptop webcam anymore. YouTube started changing and the algorithm was born. And it's this complex system that essentially teaches itself. And as a creator or as anybody who works online nowadays, you have to understand how to speak to that machine, to tell that machine what your content is about so it can promote it in the right places. But you also have to tell your audience and the real people who are absorbing your content what's important for them to hear. So many years of trial and error and figuring things out along the way. And lots of falling on my face, but like at least I know how to clean it up. So.
Thank you for sharing. The next question is for the panel. What is the most exciting aspect of your job? Peter, you can start.
Oh, sure. The most exciting aspect of my job, actually, in some ways for me, the most exciting aspect of my job is that they encourage us to keep learning and growing your skills to the point that, you know, they're paying for me to go to like NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, to go to Adobe World, to go to other training courses and just build my skills. And now on the one hand, obviously that's good for them because the more skills your employees have, you know, the better work they can do for you. But on the other hand, I mean, in my mind, but also in theirs, you know, that's what am I going to move on to do next? I mean, we're living in that world where almost no one works 40 years for that same company, you know, and so I'm learning stuff that may take me completely somewhere else. But it's just, you know, it's the fact that it's actively encouraged and that they even like set funds aside to train us to continue to do more things is really exciting.
I feel like something that brings up for me is that they're not only investing in you as just one of their employees, but they're investing in you as a whole person.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
I don't think exciting covers my job at all. I have gratifying being able to build things and see them work. And then I have terrifying when things go horribly wrong on production and I'm ultimately responsible for fixing it and making it work again. which with lots of traffic and high traffic systems and lots of people using it does happen. Things just go wrong. Things break over time. And especially on the Snappy TV side, we have thousands of Fortune 500 big media companies all over the world using it. And if some production service part of it goes down, product support gets hundreds of pages and dozens of those get to us, and it happened anytime, 24/7. And the people that are maintaining the product, if they can't figure it out, I'm the last line of defense. I'm the one that's always going to get called, and if I can't figure it out, there's nobody I can call to help me.
So you're saying there's not a single exciting aspect of your job?
That sounds pretty exciting.
I would describe it as exciting, though. I think it's terrifying. I mean, I don't look forward to that happening at all, but I enjoy like building these kinds of systems and getting these kinds of systems working, and it's a different kind of an excitement. It's like an artist creating something even, but it's code and it's programming and it's building a product that people use, which is very different, I think.
So when you have issues like that, which do happen, and then it gets to you, and then you solve the problem, do you feel excitement in the fact that you were the person to be the end-all be-all and hero?
No,
to save
not
the
at
day?
all. I try and forget about it and not worry about it until it happens again. And I've been lucky. I mean, in 4 years at Twitter, we've only had 2 real big production outages on Snappy TV, and the other products we support, we haven't had. I mean, we've had SLA problems, and we've been paged for things, but no real production outages, which has been nice.
Yeah, so humble. For myself as well, it's this amalgamation of fear and excitement. When we look at the body as a biological system, what happens when you're nervous? Your legs start to get weak, you might get sweaty palms, you maybe forget your words a little bit. But what happens when you get really excited? Your heart beats a little faster, your legs get weak, your palms get sweaty. So if this is the same physiological reaction, is it just how we perceive it as fear versus excitement? Something to think about. But terror and excitement, I think, is a part of every single day. And the reason being is because you never know what's going to happen next. You really have to think on your feet. One day you're filming a makeup tutorial, and the next thing, Good Morning America is calling. And you don't even know who Robin Roberts is. And you're like, Mom, can I go to New York by myself? Oh, are you coming? Okay. It's definitely fascinating. And something I've learned along the way is the more you learn, the less you know. The second you learn to speak and get your voice dictation right, you realize there's body language. And the second that you get body language down, there's something else. The moment that you start learning programming, you realize there's another layer. There's something deeper. And once you start to learn things about an industry or about a trade, you start to see the holes that either you need to learn or you have an opportunity to fix. And I think especially in the digital space, I'm talking to people about insecurities, I'm sharing new products, innovation in chemistry, cosmetics, beauty, and science. And there's so much that we don't yet understand, and there's so much room for creativity. And I think that premise of being able to help others and explore that as a community is really fascinating.
I think everything that you've been saying is very fascinating to not only me, but I'm sure everyone out there. This question is just for you, Peter.
Okay.
It's gonna. Are there any skills you wish that you would have learned in your schooling that you actually just learned in the field?
I'm going to turn that question slightly around, in that because I went to school as an undergrad, then worked for 20 years, and then went back to school. I mean, maybe it's what did I not learn in my first year as an undergrad. But to take my position, for example, I'm a video editor on a video editing team. When people try to join our team, obviously you have to know some video editing. You have to be familiar enough with Premiere, After Effects, and Photoshop. You need to be a competent video editor. But that's nowhere near enough to succeed. It's really much more about your sort of people social skills. If you can't fit into a team, it doesn't matter how good you are. You need to be able to work well with other people. And so you're in school and you're studying your skills, but you need to be networking. I mean, as I mentioned, I got the job at Google because a former classmate of mine just emailed me out of the blue. While you're here, pay attention to the other people in your class. Look to see who's really good at what they do. So if you're, more of a camera person, look for someone who's really good at sound and someone who's really good at editing and who's a good director, and work with them. Because you're all going to graduate and go out into the world and trying to find jobs. And often what happens, I've seen this many times, one of you may get a job and then someone will say, hey, you're really great, but do you know a sound person? And so you'll contact that sound person, or maybe vice versa, and you get contacted. So it's really about being able to work as a team. And then also, at least for my team, on our team at Google, we put out probably a couple of dozen videos a week. So we've got a lot of stuff going through, and we never have complete information. It's controlled chaos always, and you need to just, we'll get videos and say, okay, edit this, and we'll be like, well, I actually don't know if we need this, this, or this, but you don't have time to find the person who knows and tells you, or there might not even be someone who knows and tells you. You just do it. You just edit it and you send them the rough cut, and then they come back and say, oh no, actually I really wanted this. And so then you just change it and then you send them the fine cut. So you really need to be flexible and able to work with people. Yeah.
How do you suggest we show that on an application? Because when people are applying for internships and such, how do you show that you can work with other people or those qualities on the app?
To a degree, probably things like participating in student clubs and other things like that. But honestly, more what's going to happen is you're probably going to get an internship just because they bring in interns, and then on your internship, show them that you're really good at working at teams. Show them that you have initiative. Show them that you can work without detailed instruction, and then you'll have that reputation. And as I said, it's part of the networking. So it's less you having to tell someone that as it is someone who's already there knowing that about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This next question is for Justin.
Okay.
What are some of the new projects you are working on? And then what aspects of communication do you focus on when working on these projects?
Okay, so I'm working on one very large project right now. So we're building live editing into a core media product in Twitter, so that you can point any encoded video, any streamed video at a service, and then anything that's being streamed on Twitter or Periscope, you'll be able to edit after the fact or in real time. I'm working on 3 different parts of the backend services for that, and there's lots of teams involved in that. So I'm working with lots of other engineers and developing different pieces of it. One of the services that's core, the actual editing, the editing service itself, I built from scratch about a year ago. And it's been sitting on the shelf ready for the team that's supposed to be managing it and taking it on, and they started doing that, and I'm still ultimately responsible for it, and I'm trying to get away from it so that I don't have to maintain it anymore, because we actually have a platform encoding team that's actually, their core competency is just doing that. So they're doing it for all the consumer video that's uploaded now. They're doing transcoding and different services, so getting that into the existing pipeline. And then I'm also helping another team that's working on the broadcast scheduling side of things. And I'm just trying to oversee some of the data structure stuff that's coming in that's new, and making sure we're doing it right so that the system works long term and that we don't have to do a bunch of changes early on. And can you repeat the second part of that question?
What aspects of communication do you focus on when working on these projects?
I think the most important part of communication, especially in engineering, is being able to reach out and engage with people. It's sometimes hard, especially in an engineering setting. There's lots of introverts that don't want to do that, and you kind of have to fight to get people to engage with each other. And the problem is, when you're building large-scale projects, there could be hundreds of engineers involved in, like the project I'm on now, we're working in 7 different geographical locations, from 3 offices in California to Boulder, Colorado, to New York, to London. And getting all of those engineers talking to each other, and it's just you don't have to talk to everybody, but you have to talk to the specific people that are going to help you do your job better. And just getting over that hurdle of being scared about, I'm going to ask the wrong question, or I'm not sure this is the right person. And you don't find that out until you ask that question and you talk to that person. And either you find out you were right or wrong, and you move on and you make progress. And working in a larger company, it's all about making progress. In a smaller startup environment, it's easy to make progress because it's all on you usually. You have to do it. But the bigger the company gets, the more specialized everybody's functions become, and the more important it is for everybody to learn how to communicate effectively with each other. And if it's not working, I just blame my boss.
I think that's really interesting because the stereotype is that coders just sit behind the desk because they want to code. They don't want to talk to people. So I think that's a really interesting tidbit that you share with us, that you kind of have to do the same thing too. You don't get to just.
Yep, that's definitely true.
So my next question is going to be for everyone. I feel like you, Cassandra, have a personal tie to this one. You'll probably want to answer it first. But have you dealt with any forms of rejection, and how do you deal with rejection?
I think that rejection is inevitable in any part of life. And the way you reframe that in your mind is going to determine how you come out of that situation. My story with rejection started really early on with being bullied. It was feeling rejected from others, and it was also self-rejecting, not allowing myself to feel beautiful, telling myself that I wasn't good enough. I wouldn't go to the breakfast table and eat breakfast with my parents without putting on pounds of makeup because I felt like I was a waste of space and I shouldn't have to bother them with my horrible appearance. So that rejection early on was a real downer and it taught me how to hide and run away. But what happened is that wasn't good for me overall. And all of this hiding wasn't problem solving. And so instead of just continuing to be miserable, I decided to do something about it. I did research, I got out there, I talked to other people, I talked to doctors. I saw 24 by the time I started putting myself through school. I tried to understand what was going on. And when something didn't work, I had to tweak it. Now, when I did enter the digital space, of course, this beautiful little village of people who also dealt with acne was so supportive and wonderful. But as that grew, and as the internet grew under usernames and this animosity kind of started to grow as well. And you're always going to have haters. But the truth is that those haters are still giving you something valuable. When someone says, your voice sounds horrible, you talk too quickly, you have to think to yourself, okay, am I talking too fast for someone who has a different first language to understand? Can I improve on this? When someone says, you're so ugly, your face looks like a horse, it's like, okay, is my face actually a problem, or is this something that's a personal issue on this side? And once you learn to filter out these comments and this criticism, you can decide on how you can reframe your own life and take some of these and apply them as almost compliments, like, hey, you're doing a good job and I'm paying attention to you. Even though I'm hating, you've still got my attention. By the way, here's like a tidbit on what you could do better. So that is now how I reframe criticism, and I feel like it's helped me and a lot of the brands that I work with, a lot of the interns that I work with, a lot of the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, reframe both negative criticism and insecurities into opportunities for growth.
Haters are your motivators. Would you like to answer, Peter?
Sure. So I would say, I guess this is sort of dealing with rejection. So as I said, I went to UC San Diego, started as a computer science major, ended up as a major in film. And UCSD has very much a very art-focused art department, film department. So unlike Becca, which I think actually trains you guys a lot better for working in the industry, we were making a lot of like really weird black and white films that often weren't very well lit, but had crazy stuff happening in them. And would be popular amongst us in the faculty. And we had a very supportive faculty there, just as faculty supportive here. And so graduating from UCSD and moving up to San Francisco and considering myself a filmmaker who's made films and stuff like that, and then getting here and realizing that no one cared. And not only does, that's normal. You're going to get out of school and realizes that no one actually cares what you did in school. But that's fine. That was where you're preparing for life. But also, I'm trying to get a job, in the industry. I'm trying to have someone hire me to be like a camera person, and I'm showing them this weird, crazy black and white art film, and they're like, well, that was interesting. And so that's why I ended up getting a job as a projectionist, because that was honestly a job I could get that would get me some income. And then I just started working on my own projects some, doing a lot of volunteering, because that's a way to get hired, is to work for free. Of course, it helps then if you've got some other job to support you doing that. But I basically, even though I thought of myself as a filmmaker, I sort of had this dream in my head that I would arrive in San Francisco and someone would give me money to like direct my films. And that almost never happens. It happens occasionally if you get really, really lucky. But instead, I just started learning how to be a crew person. Learning, starting out as a PA, just carrying around cables and making sure I knew how to wrap those cables well so that they wouldn't fire me for that. And then you just sort of work your way up. So,
Thank you. Justin?
So I think my example for rejection is very specific to how writing code has changed over time. So when I started writing code, there wasn't a lot of code review practice. Like only the most senior engineers would review your code, and maybe that was your manager. Managers then were less focusing on management. They were more typically just engineers that had more experience, had kind of branched off into management. I think that's changed a lot in the last 5 or 6 years, where managers are really just managers. They're not typically just people that used to code more. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, the industry really shifted, and there's a lot more code review practice now. And I was completely against it when it started happening to me. I didn't like people that didn't know things as well as me being critical of the code I was writing. I didn't think other people could do it as well as I could. I was totally against it, and I fought it for about 6 months. And then I came to the realization and when I started at Twitter, they had a very strict code review policy. In order to ship any code, you had to have 2 other engineers sign off on it. And everybody that reviewed code would nitpick everything. I'm talking about what you name things, how long the lines were, where the curly braces were, whether or not you used one thing you didn't need to. I mean, you would get 100 lines of code, you might get 400 comments from 20 different people. I mean, it seemed insane to me. It's like, how do they ship any code? But what I learned after doing it enough was everybody understood what everybody else was doing a lot better. It didn't come down to just one person on a team reading everything and understanding it. It's like our whole team understood what everybody else was doing better, and it raised everybody's ability to code up more. Like when you learned a lesson, it was easy for you to share it in this review. And even though I went through like this 6-month period of feeling rejection and feeling like I wasn't doing things as well as I should, and people are still giving me the same kinds of comments, and why didn't I learn from that? Eventually, I learned to look at it from the right perspective, and then I really started to learn from it, and I feel like it did make me a lot better coder, and all the people that I work with are better because of it too.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I'm seeing a theme of rejection, using it to not to be sad or to give up.
Yes.
To learn from it and
Learn
build
from it, move forward.
Fantastic. Another question for everyone. What do you think are the biggest advancements in new media and streaming in the last 5 years? And then how do these improvements affect communication between people?
Well, I'll actually divulge a little bit on that. And I think I have a very untraditional answer. I have a feeling these two are going to have some great insights about editing, software, and techniques, but I actually want to talk about AI. Artificial intelligence is this scary thing that people think is going to take over the world. It's going to steal our automated jobs. It's going to put people out of work. But truly, I believe that AI is a technology that's going to allow us more time to think creatively. If we no longer have people who have to pack boxes or do hard labor, we can free up mental space to think, to create, to communicate, to manage, to code, or do whatever that is. And just the way the iPhone or the internet, everyone is afraid of it, and now it enhances our lives and connects us in many ways, I believe that that is kind of where the future goes. That's a very broad term, but I think for humanity overall, understanding that your brain power is the most powerful thing you have, and how you communicate that to others is your most powerful tool, is something to capitalize on. And if technology can help you do that, you're on the winning road.
I would say probably the biggest technological change in that regard is that now almost everyone has an incredibly good camera in their pocket that they have with them always. I mean, sure, a smartphone's video is still not as good as if you get a dedicated video rig, but it's getting closer and closer. I mean, to a shocking degree, and I think that's created a much, there's just so much more media production, and obviously this is also tied in with YouTube, and that's now you've got this distribution channel that reaches the world. But I mean, I remember, as I said, when I started as an undergrad, we had film, and we were working in film. Now it's because the video we had was U-matic 3/4-inch video, which was the tapes were like this big. Then you had a deck, and then you had the cord running to this giant camera. So this is, and it was like $20,000 for all of that. And then, we went through the video sort of revolution where camcorders got better and cheaper. We moved into mini DV, which was, digital video for the masses. But even that was always still a small segment of the population. with smartphones now, that's just creating, you know, a whole new media literacy, I think. And you're even seeing films shot on iPhones. Now, that's always sort of a cheat, because if you see the rig they use to shoot some of these so-called iPhone films, it's where you put an actual lens attached to like the lens of the camera, you put it in like a Red Rock rig, and you've got external audio. So it's sort of cheating to call that just an iPhone, because now you've got an iPhone with like, you know, $10,000 worth of additional video equipment. But just the iPhone on its own, or I'm sorry, Google, I should be talking about Android phones, but a lot of us have iPhones. You've got like, you know, your Pixel or something like that too. It's, you know, that's made a big difference in just, you know, the shooting and distribution of video.
I could talk about like encoding and standards and how a lot of them haven't changed very much, and I think there's going to be a lot of evolution there. I mean, RTMP was kind of pushed over by LHS 4 or 5 years ago. LHS isn't that much different. I don't think that conversation is very interesting. I think what has really changed and what's really different and that we're still trying to understand is moving from things happening in very close to real time. When I started doing Snappy TV, like one of our first customers was CNN, and CNN at the time, 8 years ago, their website was about water cooler conversations the day after. So they would have their production crew working on primetime TV, and it would end up in some video CMS that would be 30-hour-long segment shows. And then the next day, an internet, you know, something whose new job was to take that video and cut it down to some highlight reel and put it up on the website so people at work could talk about it over the water cooler. And you see how that's changed, where when something happens in real time on TV or through some stream anywhere, it's all over the internet. If it's something people want to talk about, there's clips of it, there's things happening, and there's like the MIT lab is working on this way to describe visually how conversations around video are happening, and they look like these green and red blooms and flowers, and they're trying to measure like the health and toxicity of these conversations around video and how quickly they're happening. And I think that a lot of the innovation we're going to see in the next couple of years is more around understanding like how video is impacting those conversations and how those conversations can evolve to be more dynamic and get more people involved. Because right now it's just the people with 800,000 followers that have really strong voices, and everything else is kind of being drowned out in some sense. And I think that like the health of platforms in general is a real problem right now, and everybody's struggling to make that better. And it's going to be interesting to see like if that leads to more censorship or more problems, or if we have good solutions in the next couple of years to solve that.
That's really interesting, and I think I'm gonna butcher this stat, absolutely, just forewarning. But I learned something the other day in one of my classes that 30% of the jobs that the current generation in primary education right now are actually the careers that 30% of the careers that they're going to have do not exist yet. And so I think that's really interesting to what you're saying, is that, you know, communication is so important, and that we are learning to communicate, but we're learning to communicate with people that don't even know what, you know, their career field hasn't even opened up yet. And just like coding, you're saying it has not changed in a long time, but it's going to.
Some of the internals haven't changed, especially around video, but like social media managers didn't exist 8 years ago when we started Snappy TV, and those are all the people using it now.
So this next question is going to be for anyone that pleases. What challenges do you face when communicating through new media, and where does communication become difficult?
For me, one of the biggest issues being on YouTube is finding that line between communicating with the person versus the algorithm. If I am trying to create a YouTube video that has some really impactful information in it, I need to title it in a way that you're going to click on it. What happened when I stopped wearing makeup for 3 weeks? 3 things I learned when I started shaving my face. Why diets don't work, proved by science. That's what's going to get you to click. But if the internal video is about this topic and so much more, how can I communicate that to an algorithm? If I say what I learned by not wearing makeup, it's going to come up for not wearing makeup stuff. But that's actually about inspiration. It's about skin health, and it's about my emotional stability. So you need to find a way to talk to both this algorithm and this human at the same time. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that any content creator faces. Also, like you were saying, all of these media platforms are moving in fast forward speed. We're not watching things in real time anymore. Everything is on fast forward. And so what's available today might be obsolete tomorrow. And what's going to be available tomorrow hasn't even been created. So as a creator, whether you're creating media, whether you're writing, whether you're trying to do something online or even create a blog, you need to kind of think 2 steps ahead and you need to be very adaptive. And that's what I found. There's not an answer to every question, but you need to come up with an answer and adapt to one that works for the situation that you're in.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to now open it up to audience questions. By a raise of hands, we will choose you to ask a question. Yes?
Yeah, I would just like to ask everyone, what's like the newest trend, whether like internet or technology, that you either hated or didn't really like that much?
So I'll speak to that. If we look at YouTube as a perfect example, YouTube started off, CEO Susan says it was like a village. It was a couple people, everything was manageable. And as it grew into this big, beautiful city, and then a nation, and then a world, it became a little bit more difficult to manage. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that people have nowadays is how do you unite people in that way without too much censorship, etc. And where I think that's going in the future, could you repeat part of that question again?
Yeah, just like a trend, whether internet or technology that you haven't really liked.
Got it. So to divulge on that, as this became bigger, it became a little bit less personal. When you think about it, I'm here connecting with you on acne, but if there's so many of us and if it feels disconnected, we're not able to communicate as well anymore. And with social media, especially as social media stars, it becomes when are you living for the content versus living in the moment. And the truth is that right now, you're living for the content. There is no enjoyment of that moment because you have to capture it, you have to package it in the right way in order to make it viewable. But I think that where social media is going, because this is a pain point for everybody, it's becoming a little bit more manageable. It's becoming more live stream. It's becoming more compacted to a way that you can see it in real time, you can react to it in real time. Reaction videos are huge as well. And as we see these platforms go from I consume this to I contribute to this, I think that is going to help us share our unique voices, stop censorship while still at the same time respecting others' differences. In a much more effective way.
I think I have one thing to mention on that. I think there's more of a trend lately for bad actors on platforms to do things just to be bad actors, which wasn't the case even a year ago. Like you didn't have to worry about the health of the platform other than people, having opinions you didn't agree with or doing things you didn't agree with, but they had real legitimate things, and there was ways of like dealing with the health of the platform and trying to talk about how to deal with that. But now there's people that just want to write a script to duplicate the comments on Periscope for no reason other than annoy everybody that's looking at that stream. And there's just this new prevalence of people writing malicious code just to be jerks. And I hope it goes away, but I don't see it dying down anytime soon.
Okay, so I've got a slightly different trend. This is one that's been bothering me for years. My students used to hear me complain about this all the time. And it's this idea with both phones and televisions where every year the manufacturers need to come out with something better so that you'll have reasons to buy new ones. And so specifically within video, we went to HD, 720 or 1080, and then in the last few years we've been going up to 4K. And now they're already starting to push 8K. And the same thing with phones where you go to Retina and you get more and more pixels on the screen. And most of the time, in most viewing situations, we cannot actually see the difference. It's mostly, in many ways, sort of like a marketing scam to get you to buy another TV. In order to see the actual quality improvement of a 4K television, it needs to be like right here. And no one, almost, I'm sure some people, actually my 2-year-old daughter stands that close, but that's not a good thing. But if you've got a TV in a standard viewing situation, you can't see the difference between 1080 standard HD and 4K. And meanwhile, they're now trying to bring out 8K because that's going to be even better. And the same thing with the phones. I mean, they use this term Retina quality, which is sort of a fuzzy term, but it's got kind of a meaning. But really what it is it's so good that that's as good as we can see, which almost by definition means if you're adding in more smaller pixels and squeezing them more together, you just can't see that. And so I think, yeah, this sort of like, we need to keep adding these like statistics to the, the stats for our devices need to get better and better so that everyone will keep buying them every couple of years.
And the chargers.
Well, and all the accessories and everything else too, yes. Another question?
So since you guys spend a lot of time working with technology, does it ever get overwhelming to the point where you feel like you need to detox or take a break or like wander out in nature, stuff like that?
I will say that I know it's supposed to, but for me, it kind of doesn't. Because for instance, I like to take long walks, especially on the weekends. I'll go for an hour or two walk. But on my walks, I'm sometimes, if I'm going like in sort of a more nature area, I may be seeing nature, but I'm listening to podcasts and audiobooks on my phone constantly. So that's probably supposed to be a bad thing, I guess. But I'm surrounded by technology. I've been surrounded by it my entire life, and I generally don't need a break from it.
So for me, opposite problem. I grew up with a mom who rides motorcycles. I grew up climbing trees and that kind of thing. And while working in media, a lot of people don't see behind the scenes. Like as a YouTuber, you're working 20-hour days. You're waking up at 4 a.m. to go to bed at midnight to try to edit, upload, shoot, produce videos, and at the same time get it out to all those socials, answer your emails, and score a brand deal at the same time, while trying to plan travel to do something that's really important and industry changing. And I always find that I crave nature. That's actually something that I'm trying to put back into my content more, because smoky eyes are cool, but I really don't care about smoky eyes. I care about acne, skin science, and nature. And I'm trying to incorporate that a little bit more. And I've found that a really great balance is I charge up my laptop and I'll literally go sit outside in the garden or the trees, and I'll do some of my editing there. So that's a way for me to kind of bring my work into an environment that I feel creative and rejuvenated by. One embarrassing moment, I was having a conference call and I decided to climb a tree, and I didn't realize it was like right before lunch down in Palo Alto by the office building. And so like all these people came out, and there's this girl in a blazer just having a phone call in a tree. And at first I really got down and out about myself for that, but at the same time, that is a piece of my upbringing, that is a piece of my personality that I can't deny. So for me, it's just about finding a way to more healthfully integrate that into my work.
So my answer is partly about the motorcycle, I guess. I have a 50-mile commute one way, so 100 miles round trip. So I spend 45 minutes each way on the motorcycle, no matter what the traffic is doing. But my idea of decompressing is writing more code. This last week was Hack Week at Twitter. I could have taken it easy. I could have worked from home all week. I went in every day. It's the only week this year, entire year, I went in every day. I led a team of 12 engineers. I did not go to sleep before 3 a.m. I got in the office at 7 a.m. every day. That was my idea of decompressing.
Hi, so I know, Peter, you mentioned something about how important having soft skills were. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to speak on that. And is there any like tips or advice you have for the more introverted people, and like how they could develop their soft skills in terms of like networking and stuff like that?
The unfortunate fact is that the answer to that is you just kind of have to just keep doing it. I mean, I am by nature an introvert. I was an introvert as a kid. I mean, I spent, I had friends, I went and did stuff, but I also spent a lot of time home alone on the computer because I'm not always comfortable in social situations. And you just, I hate to say it, but you just kind of got to get over it. Now, it helps sometimes by like finding like the right people who will help bring out those parts of you, finding those people that you can get along with. I mean, sometimes it's this funny situation where you find some other introverts, and because you all have sort of the same sort of like social neuroses, you can kind of bond over that and then work together as a group in that way. And so it's more like, well, the four of us, we're still uncomfortable around everyone else, but we're comfortable together, and so that's that first stage. The other thing is, at least for me, I found that the one time, the situations where I'm comfortable socially is when it involves something I'm good at. So I'm by nature an introvert, but I've also been a teacher. And I taught video production, and here at Becca I also taught a class called The Age of Information, which is basically about the history and social effects of the internet. And that's basically been my life. So on those subjects, I'm able to go up and stand and just start talking. And Now, I do lesson plans and stuff like that too to prepare, but I'm just completely comfortable talking about that kind of stuff. And so I just do it. And so once again, maybe it's, finding social situations that revolve around something you're good at could be another way, because, you'll feel more confident in that situation.
So Justin, you mentioned that you were working on a hack. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
So for my Hack Week, we built a replacement of Slack that works on Twitter DM, because I don't understand why as a company we're using another product that does real-time communication. There's some things missing from the DM client at Twitter, so we built a new back-end service that works off Manhattan, which is Twitter's big data store. And we built organization structure and relationships between users, channels, and organizations. We built a new HTTP service on top of that, and then we forked all of the front-end code at Twitter for responsive web, which drives the web client, the mobile client, and then we built a Mac OS client. We had a lead designer at Twitter working on our team, so we had full-size posters, and we printed 300 flyers for our project and posted them over 8 floors in 2 buildings. And we had a giant monitor, 8-foot monitor to do our Hack Week presentation on, and it was nothing was working Thursday afternoon. Like actually Wednesday night, after 3 days of coding, we still couldn't get our forked version of the code to talk with the HTTP server. We tried to build 3 different proxy server solutions, and we ended up just hacking every security policy in the code possible. So this code could never actually go anywhere besides our staging servers, but it worked. Thursday, we had all 10 engineers on the project demo different parts of working functionality, and by 5 p.m. that day on Thursday, everybody had their code merged and working, and we had a working demo, and we all showed up in the morning and demoed it to the whole company Friday morning. It was one of those Hack Weeks. It was pretty phenomenal.
And I'm sure on Friday you pretended the whole week was a breeze.
I am not leading another Hack Week project for a while. Maybe another 2 years.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Okay, there, Mike.
Hi, this is a question for anyone really. What kind of tips do you have about sort of like self-motivation, like teaching yourself a new program or skill or something, and how do you kind of keep it all straight when you're kind of on your own learning?
So for myself to answer that, first off, identify what you don't understand. My favorite advice to anybody about how to read a book is look at the back first. Look at the glossary, look at the dictionary, and figure out what you don't understand and what you need to figure out. Reverse engineer your goals. So if you know you want to be a YouTuber, what is that going to take? It's not just going to take a camera or some good content. You need to know how to storytell, how to communicate. If you want to be a programmer, you need to know how to write these codes. You need to know how to communicate with other people and how to actually pitch your code to a company if you're doing this on your own. So I would say identify your goals, because if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up anywhere. Identify at least what you want and be flexible about how to get there. And lastly, the internet is such a wealth of information. You can literally type anything in and find an answer. It might not be right, which is why you need to check your sources and check their resources. But you can literally learn anything. I learned communication. I learned how to video edit. I learned processing. I learned scripting. I learned all of these tools that I use on a daily basis to manage and grow this business and other people's businesses, because I asked different questions. And when I learned something, I had to fill in a new hole. So motivate yourself by figuring out where you want to go. Identify your why that's important to you, so that you don't just give up when you get some criticism or when it gets hard, and then reverse engineer that. Ask the people who know the answers, find the people who are doing what you do and ask them for mentorship, reach out to them on Twitter, hit them up on Instagram and be like, can you please teach me this weird thing about Premiere? And just keep going through that until you get the answers that you need. And then you can be that for somebody else.
I'd like to add a little bit more. I think one thing to be careful of is in sort of like your initial stages, don't focus too much on that exact one thing you want, because you're almost never going to get that exact one thing. But if you open up your viewpoint even a little bit so that it's more some like related things, you might be that. So it's, and along with that, so let that guide you to try some like different things, and also see what just grabs your interest. I mean, you don't want to like decide I want to be this and then sort of like monolithically go towards it. and then realize that you don't like it. I mean, a friend of mine, knowing that like in this day and age, computer science is a good career, a friend of mine learned computer programming, went really in depth using lynda.com and IT Pro TV to really become a programmer, got pretty good at it, got hired at it, and then realized she hated it. And I'm like, how did you reach this point without stopping to think, I don't like doing this? So also try to find something, it's nice when the things you like can lead to making a good living, but you need to at least somewhat enjoy what you're doing. I mean, you're never going to completely enjoy everything about your job. Working at Google now is the best job I've ever had. There are bad days, there are bad weeks, but there's enough good in it that I'm happy with it. And in part, I didn't set out planning to get a job at Google. As I said, I was teaching, but as part of my teaching, I know technology and I know video production. So suddenly, out of the blue, someone offered me this job, and I had the skills to do it. And I had the skills to do it because it's where my areas of interest are. So,
I would say my advice specifically for learning how to program or learning a language, once you've learned a couple of languages, it's easy to pick up languages. Like I've probably programmed in 100 different languages in my career. The first couple are always the hardest. I would say my best advice is put it in context. You read all these books that are trying to teach you all these concepts, and maybe they put them in different contexts for you and try and make you understand those contexts. Put it in your context. Like, don't learn Java. Learn how to build something you want to build and use Java to do it. It'll be so much easier to figure out what pieces of that language you need to actually truly understand to get there, and you'll get through a lot of the core competencies a lot quicker, I think, if you just put it in some real-world context that you can understand and try and apply it to.
Thank you so much. I have to say that all of you guys come from very different backgrounds and have very different things to say that are all have been very helpful to all of us and very well-rounded. So that was our last question. Cameron, I'm sad it's over.
I know, Addie. It's been so much fun, and I definitely learned a lot.
Me too. Before we go, we need to properly thank all three of our guests for coming out and sharing their knowledge and their journeys with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a special surprise for you guys from the CSB. We'd like to thank you, each one of you, for taking the time to come speak with us. And with can we have another applause for them?
And that concludes our show today. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
And we have a surprise. Gifts for coming.
Can I give it to Natalie?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Folks, please feel free to mingle with our guests and ask them any personal questions that you feel you didn't want to speak previously. And I know we do have food for everyone. Over there. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.